Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about the healthcare cyber attack and other things. It is Tuesday, February 27, 2024. And might as well start with you, Doug. Go ahead.
Yeah, so boy, do we have some stories today and some follow-ups on stories that we've talked about in recent episodes. So there's a class action lawsuit in California over private companies scanning and selling license plate data that's going to trial. And if you feel that your privacy has been violated, there's a website that you can visit. And Sam, are we going to put that out there?
Yeah, it's up
It's
there.
called, yeah, Check My Plate.
Hmm.
So this is a lawsuit that's pretty interesting. And Sam, have you been following this at all?
No, I got a similar story about a different company, but not this one.
Okay. Okay. So this is a company out of Texas. And what they've been doing is collecting what would be public data. So they're not doing anything illegal per se, but they are collecting that, they are taking that data and they are selling it. So information that they're collecting is not about you per se, but it's about your car and specifically license plate. So I don't know how they're collecting the data, but I'm assuming they either have fixed cameras or cars that are driving around that are collecting license plate data with geolocation, latitude, longitude data, so they can tell where the car is, but not necessarily the individual in the car. So the way this could be used, the way this is used right now is government is using it for fast lanes or high occupancy lanes or bridge tolls. They're using license plate recognition to
Oh, yes.
collect the bridge tolls. Yeah.
Well, that I
And
know.
that's, yeah, that's been going on. They
Yeah.
also are using it for red light cameras, and that one is going through the courts. But this is completely different in that it's a private company
Right.
and it can tell, are you at work? Are you at the hospital? Is your car at the airport? But other data that they can collect is, where's your car on Sunday mornings? Things
Yeah.
along those lines. Sam, let me let you comment on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was wondering what good this is, but now that you mention it, it sounds like it would be very useful. You could figure out whether it's worth putting a Starbucks in this location. Are there really enough people commuting there that might buy a cup of coffee or something?
Well, or are people really going to the gym or doctors? Are you really going to the doctor's office when you say you're sick?
Well,
Or is
sure,
your
but how, I mean, that would be an individual case. I don't think aggregated data would be commercially useful there.
no, but they are, they are collecting it, they are selling it. But
Yeah.
you could have governments, private industry. Are you going to vote? What license plates are at the voting polls? There's a lot of
I get
other
it.
ways that I think that companies would be creative in using in the future that we're not thinking about right now.
Yeah. Car repossessors, they mentioned that's the obvious one. And
Yeah,
insurance.
yep, car repossessors, insurance. So yeah, we're not thinking this through, but the data has been and is collected.
But I think the lawsuit will have to claim that some kind of harm has been done.
Yeah, so this is why this is going to be an interesting case. Very interesting case. But they are currently selling the data, is what I've read.
The case hinges on a law um, setting up a $2,500 minimum payment for those who successfully sue violators. The collection and dissemination of automated, um, it's very unclear exactly what they're claiming is illegal about this.
Well, they're not saying it's per se illegal because these are pictures that are taken in the public where
Yeah,
there's no expectation of privacy.
yeah,
However, you could put together a profile that would identify somebody kind of like cookies, if you would. You know
yeah,
where the
yeah,
car you know where the car lives. In
yeah,
other words, you know where the car is parked at night. You know where somebody works. So you can put together, this is like metadata.
Yeah, well, this sounds important. I mean, the company is claiming they did nothing wrong. This is public information, and the lawyers are trying to claim that they invaded your privacy, and that itself is a type of harm. So it does sound like an important precedent to set.
Yeah, and where else but California to do this?
Well, of
We
course.
like to, yeah, we like to test privacy.
Yeah.
So you have anything else, or you want to get to your first story?
Well, I ought to mention I got one that totally goes along with this. In fact, I thought it was the same story at first.
Oh,
There's,
okay.
you got the company from Texas, DRN, and this is about Flock. And Flock is a company, I'm not sure where it's from, but they worked with law enforcement agencies to put cameras places. And what they've done, they're like Uber. They've expanded putting cameras on light poles, on bridges everywhere to take the license plate numbers. And they have been unable to really keep track of all the little local city laws about whether you can do that or not. So they've been just putting cameras up all over the place without permission. And people are getting mad that you needed to like get clearance from this agency and that agency. And so they're being accused of having broken the law in many states just with the way they installed the cameras. But they claim the law enforcement agencies are very strongly behind them because they say it's really valuable to have that data for fighting crime.
Yeah, I will tell you where I live, the cities here, I think three of them have gotten together and they've put cameras up on stop signs,
Yeah.
and it's motion detection, and they're recording license plates on major arteries or major streets.
Oh,
And they,
these guys claim they're going to reduce crime in America by 25%.
yeah, well, we'll have to see that stat, won't we?
Yeah.
I don't know how that license plate recognition comes back to, you know,
Well, I think,
reducing crime by 25%.
well,
All
I
you
don't,
need to do is put a piece of cardboard over the license plate and you don't have it.
well, but I don't ever see a car doing that. I think they get pulled over. And I think, no, I think the
Oh,
number of crimes that involve somebody driving away are very large, stolen cars, robberies, and everything. So I think if you had a good network where you could totally tell where every car was all the time, that would greatly reduce crime. It would also be
yeah.
incredible intrusion in your privacy. Like California, then they could find out who was going to abortion clinics and all sorts of things.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Same with my story too, right? You
Yeah,
could
yeah,
find out what, yeah, yeah. We talked about where cars are Sunday morning. You
yeah,
could see what cars are attending abortion clinics, things along those lines.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah. It's going to be interesting. The military, I don't know if you're familiar, had a product that was being sold to them. I don't know if they bought it, but it's called Eye in the Sky.
No, I
You
don't know
familiar
that.
with that?
No.
So they would launch a balloon or have a drone that would fly over a certain area like a city and continually take pictures. And what they were able, and they're not high resolution pictures, so it's really a pixel. So somebody has to be highly trained to see what they're looking at. But what they're able to do is, let's say that a robbery has taken place, they can go back in time and they can see or follow the path that the getaway vehicle took to get to the crime. And so they can find out where the car originated from, something along those lines.
Yeah,
And supposedly it's highly successful. I don't know. I'm sure it's very expensive, something that military could buy, but I don't think cities could buy it.
yeah. Well, there is a bill up. I think it's Prop E in San Francisco to give the cops more technology like this. There were
Yeah,
protests against it.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like all technology, double-edged sword, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
All right. Why don't you go on to your next one?
So next one here. Have you heard about the small Iowa newspapers website that's become an AI generated clickbait factory?
I haven't heard of that one, but I've certainly seen quite a few of them on the web.
Okay, so this is two former Meta employees dug into a website in Iowa, and it's called the Clayton County Register. Again, Clayton County Register. And they were wondering why it was spewing out dubious posts about stocks. And what they did is they uncovered a network of AI generated content.
Yeah.
And we've got a link there. This is to a Wired story.
Yeah.
So I suspect we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. It's cost effective
Oh,
to
yeah.
have AI generated content rather than to pay people to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been hearing for the last decade about the demise of small town newspapers and really even large newspapers. I mean, the whole news business is not making enough money. It's dying like vinyl records. So this is going to be the last gasp of a dying industry.
Yeah, newspapers, and I would argue TV as well. Radio is sort of hanging out there, but I suspect that that's going to go by the wayside too. Technology changes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's going to be the internet.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and I think people are learning how to monetize the internet better. So, like the New York
yeah,
Times is considered a success story. They actually managed to move to an online model and make money. So,
yeah. We'll see. But haven't some of the New York Times stories been questionable?
oh, of course,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
of course, right now, in the world of politics, all the major outlets like CNN are trying to move to the right to please the Trump followers, and that's the problem with the modern America is you used to have like mainstream news that was in the middle and everybody watched it. And now no matter what you do, half of everybody hates it because there is no
Yeah.
middle. You're either right or left.
Yeah, that's something I took a class about was media technology years ago. And it's interesting that if you look at news, it was considered, why would anybody put news on radio or TV?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until around the Vietnam War that they realized that news was about 5 minutes, that they could expand it to 15 minutes, and then eventually half hour. And now we have 24-hour news. And it's turned out to be a huge profit center.
I didn't know that. I thought it was too expensive to produce, but I guess they're just copying each other's stories.
Well, yeah, if we did a study on this, and if you take a look at the major networks, they would all have the same story
Yeah.
and pretty much all in the same order. And at that time, again, this goes back about 20, 30 years. At that time, you don't want to upset the formula because everybody's using the same formula and it seems to work. And
Yeah.
the only thing that draws people in are the personalities, who's ever giving the newscast. And that's what made you different. Same stories, right? And the amount of time dedicated to each story was always about the same.
Yeah.
And kind of like a sitcom comedy or a drama TV show, there was a formula that was followed. You'd hit up with hardcore news. You'd talk about kind of a lighter story or a fun
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
You'd go into sports, you'd go into weather, and you'd end with a nice public interest story at the end to make everybody happy at the end.
Yeah, you're right. And now they've got a sort of a new formula. It's pretty much outrage.
Yeah,
The left and the
yeah.
right. That's what keeps people coming back to find out what terrible things the other guys did today.
Yeah, and Sam, I'm curious, do you know what that pivotal point in politics was, where in the past it was always positive for your candidate, but there was one event that took place in the 60s that we switched from positive towards your candidate, like I Like Ike, remember
Yeah.
songs like that,
Yeah.
JFK and things along those lines. But there was one ad that changed everything, that we went to negative press against the other candidate. You can find it on YouTube still today.
I don't know, but I'm guessing it would be around Nixon.
Um, nope, it was prior to Nixon. Well, the Nixon presidency, but it was called the Daisy ad. And there was a picture of a girl. She's in a field and she's got a daisy. She's pulling the petals off of it. And right now, I don't remember who the candidate was, but the camera zooms in on her eye and you see a nuclear bomb exploding in the background or in the pupil of her eye. And the question becomes, I think it was, do you trust your presidential candidate to be able to control nuclear weapons or
Yeah,
something along those lines?
I think I think that one was later. I remember the first one was the flyers that just said, "Would you buy a used car from this man?" with a picture of Nixon.
Yeah, I believe that came later. The
Yeah,
Daisy ad, I think, was I don't know, it was McGovern maybe
could have
and
been.
Johnson.
But
Yeah.
I think negative campaigning is extremely effective, but it arguably degrades the whole system. But we're deeply in it now, where almost all the ads are negative.
Yeah, well, that's the change. That if
Yeah.
you look into kind of political history in the US, that was the ad. And I believe that people were outraged over it, that it only aired once and they pulled it. But that set the tide, so to
Well,
speak.
and we've got it fits the mood of the country. In like the 50s, things were positive. You had Leave It to Beaver, people mostly had happy
Yep.
stuff. And I think they've shown like art and opinions. The whole world is pretty negative now. Like in the 80s, you had a lot of post-Holocaust Terminator kind of stuff. And almost everything is pretty dark and pessimistic these days, which I think fits, an empire in decline. Uh,
Yeah. It sells.
well,
It gets
I think it's art is a reflection of reality. I think most people know, I certainly see it among my students, the young people today have less than their parents. It's too hard for
yeah.
them to find a job and get a car. So I think is what determines the mood of the country. Is your kids doing better than you or not? And kids are not doing better than their parents anymore. And that makes everybody pretty depressed, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I know in the Bay Area it's all about housing and jobs,
Yeah,
right?
I think all over the country. I think in the flyover states, this is
Yeah.
what leads to Trump. I mean, they feel like there used to be a time when a man with a high school education could support a whole family and have a house, and they don't know why they can't still do that, which is not
Yeah.
unreasonable. That does
Yeah.
seem
Yeah.
like something is
Yeah.
seriously wrong with society if you can't do that.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah.
All right. So you got another story for
Oh
us.
yeah. Well, I was very interested about this. I've been following this. So, geoengineering, solar geoengineering is almost certainly coming. I mean, the planet is heating really fast, and the only cure is going to be to artificially cool it. And there are several plans to do it. And Switzerland has now called on the UN to have a special exploratory panel to decide what kind of solar engineering should be done. And everybody screamed and said, "You're going to give it legitimacy, and this is terrible and should be totally banned." They said, "Yes, well, when we should totally ban it, but there should be rules because right now just random people are trying it on a small scale here and there." One of the main things they want to do is just dump a bunch of sulfur dioxide in the stratosphere, which would reflect sunlight away. But it seems like they're afraid it would also harm the ozone layer, and you can't remove it once you put it up there. I mean, it won't stay there forever, but it seems like it could create various forms of pollution. But it kind of reminds me a lot of OpenAI. They propose something, and then they say, "Oh, we proposed it to stop it," which sounds kind of bogus.
Yeah.
But I think this is inevitable. I think we're feeling the climate effects a lot now, and I think it won't be long before the pressure becomes so large that we're going to start trying these things. I think we should. I mean, we're like somebody that's dying of a disease, and you have to take a dangerous drug to fight the disease.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's experimental.
Well,
So,
there've been a couple experiments on a small scale. I mean, the big ones are
yeah.
putting particles in the air or putting particles in the sea, both of which can help. A bunch of iron in the sea causes the plankton or something to suck carbon dioxide into the sea, and putting stuff in the air reflects away the sunlight. It seems like we probably need to do all these things. Other people say that it's all bogus, it's garbage, it's the oil companies pretending you can do this so they can burn more oil, and the only cure is to immediately quit burning oil. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen either.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of industry that we rely on petroleum. I'll, I'll, I'll tell you the sad part is kind of a related story is the just like the cigarette industry and the sugar industry knew years, decades in advance that cigarettes cause cancer. I don't know if you know where I'm going, that sugar would cause a massive obesity issue problem in the United States.
Yeah.
The petroleum plastic industry realized decades ago that plastic would not be able to be recycled. And I think it's estimated right now that less than 1% of plastic today is recycled.
Right. And And now they've found the microplastics everywhere in everybody's bodies and in babies and everything.
Yeah, yeah. And the microplastics also draw in, or molecules adhere to them, so that when they get in your body, like birth control pills or, drugs that are in our water supply, they attach to those pieces of plastic, they get into your body and then disassociate. And you get a small micro dose of some of these drugs that are out there that don't degrade.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really not clear what effect those microplastics are going to have, but yeah, yeah, well, that's
Yeah, and you've seen the garbage patches. I think there's
yeah,
7 of them, and they're 3 times in the Pacific Ocean, the size of Texas
yeah,
is what, yeah. And what's interesting is those plastics are only in the top 10 feet or so of the oceans.
yeah, yep,
But all right,
yeah.
enough of that. You got another one.
I do.
Move on.
Uh, there's an MIT student that has made a device that is straight out of like the X-Men comics. You wear this thing like a little uh, earphone sort of thing, and it
Yeah.
picks up the motions. He says, when you think about words, there is a signal sent to your mouth that makes small motions, uh, speaking the words, and he can pick that up. So it can read your thoughts and send them to a computer, and you control computers silently with this, and it can send the results back through your ear with bone conduction. So you can totally control a computer with your mind just by wearing this gadget without having to implant some brain implant into your skull or anything. And they got videos of it working.
Huh, isn't that, we talked about this with Elon's neural network
But Elon
implant.
drills in and puts something in contact in your brain, which is the way it's done for like patients that have paralysis and stuff. But this is just a gadget you can wear, which apparently accomplishes the same thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Chinese were working on that, and they have a lab of about 50 people that supposedly have something that clips onto your ear
Yeah,
or inserts into your, there's no operation necessary.
right.
So it looks like this is promising technology, or the Chinese are copying what this MIT student has done, trying to
Yeah.
reproduce.
I remember I've heard of this subvocalization thing where you make tiny motions of your mouth, and he claims it's involuntary. All you have to do is think about words, and it will pick up the words you're thinking from these involuntary motions of the muscles around your mouth. So, if
Yeah,
so, that sounds great. It'd be
yeah.
interesting to see what comes of it.
We'll see, right? We'll
It,
see.
I imagine it would take training and be unreliable, but I don't know, might be valuable.
Well, I've been watching on YouTube or TikTok one of the videos. Somebody has a dog and they have these tiles on the floor that are words. And so the dog will come along and put a paw, it'll say open door and gotta poop.
Yeah.
And so, somebody will say, what is it? What do you need? And the dog will step on these different tiles.
Well, I've seen those for
So,
cats too, and I would imagine that would work. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right. Let me
Yeah.
give you a story. This is interesting about Google and other large companies.
Hmm.
And this is kind of going back what we were talking about with housing and cost of living. But they've decided to close their company-run and company-sponsored daycare centers.
Mm.
And Google's closing end of this year, which I think affects, if I remember correctly, around 2,500 students or employees, families.
Mm.
So it's going to make it more difficult for people to find affordable daycare.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard daycare is extremely expensive. It's a huge problem for working parents.
It is, and it's this trend seems to be spreading to other companies as well. So we'll see on that, right?
It's too bad because the company would seem to be a really simple, cost-effective way to do it.
I would think so, and it would be a perk of being hired.
Yeah, I'm thinking this would be a way to attract good people.
Yeah, but apparently the tide is turned on that, and now they're closing them. So, and other companies following along.
Well, these days everybody is tightening their belt and cutting budgets, so I
Yeah,
imagine it's a cost-benefit analysis.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
we mentioned in January that out of what they call the Magnificent Seven. The big tech companies laid off 21,000, 24,000 in January,
Yeah.
and their stock did well as a result of that.
Yeah,
So
I've heard cutting costs is a really good way to improve your profits in a quarter.
it is. It is. So I got a kind of related school story, if you
Yeah.
will. This one is out of Canada, and this one we might want to talk a little bit about. But there's an art teacher that's been taking students' works of art and selling them online without permission or without knowledge of the students. And the parents are now irate about this. And the question becomes, can the teacher legally do this? And
Well,
any thoughts?
I would think no, but then on the other hand, maybe children don't have so much rights. If a child produces something, who owns it? Is it the parents or who? It's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. And there have been a couple lawyers that have talked about this. And this is the artwork of the child.
Yeah.
And the child is given a blank piece of paper or a blank slate, let's say,
Well,
to
they're also
create.
they're
Yeah.
also provided with materials and guidance from the teacher. So the teacher could claim they provided, the situation to make it possible, and that art would not exist without the teacher providing that stuff.
Well, and that would be the state. So shouldn't the school take ownership of that? Yeah, we do that with the universities when patents and things are discovered. Those are owned by our universities.
Well, not necessarily, but they include it in your contract. And this will be the issue.
Yeah,
You would have to
yeah.
include, I guess, in the contract and whatever agreement the parents sign when the kid goes to school, you'd have to think of this and put it in. And if you don't, it's not going to be clear.
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of quickly two different sides of the story here.
Mhm.
So this is going to court, and we'll see where this is going. Again, not in the United States, but I'm sure this is probably going on in the United States as well. And it'd be interesting to see how much money the teacher's making off of it.
They
But it's
claim it can go
Etsy.
up to
It's
$160
really
for a
okay.
picture. So I have
Okay.
no idea if they're actually getting that, but I guess that'd be a lot of money.
Yeah. So here are kind of two thoughts. This is the student's original artwork. And in the United States, there are copyright laws that are protecting original pieces of art or original works.
But what if you're not an adult? Does that
Well,
still apply?
what about a child actor or a child singer? That's their
I,
work.
well, no, I think of all the famous cases like Britney Spears, their parents control the money when they're minors.
Yeah, the
And
parents
often
control.
to their detriment.
Yeah, and isn't that also the case with Taylor Swift that her songs at 15? She was a minor then.
I know, and I imagine her parents had control over the money, but I'm not sure. But I think that's the
But
case.
but that's the money, not the art, not the piece of work or not the artwork itself.
I don't know. I think if the kid reached the age of 18 and then had a big fight with their parents, there would be an argument over who gets the ownership of the back catalog. I don't think it's a slam dunk that it would go to the artist.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me give you a kind of quick overview from a lawyer. What a lawyer is saying is in art class, you're given a blank piece of paper
Yeah.
and you're to create whatever it is, the piece of art, and you submit it for a grade. So this is your own creativity versus, let's say you take a math exam or a history exam. You've got not a blank piece of paper, but you've got a piece of paper that has words on it, and you're circling the correct answer, or you're filling in answers. And the thought there is, yes, that's also a creative piece of work. That's your artwork, right? That's your knowledge that's on paper. That's your creativity. But that's not quite the same as starting with a blank piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, this is the same.
So,
Sometimes it's company property. That's why this stuff has to go to
yeah,
court. There are always like nuances.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
reminds me of like the issue about AI generated art. Can you copyright it? Who owns it and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah, good point. Yeah, who would own AI art? That's a good question.
I was reading a story about a guy who makes portraits of dogs just with AI. He said, I tried starting from pictures, but it wasn't as good. It turned out by making a careful description of the dog, you get a really nice picture. And there was a guy on Social Security podcast. One of the hosts was giving a lecture, and he just went to AI and said, give me a picture of like an old gray beard Unix tech guy. And it looked a lot like him. So he just used that for his profile. So apparently this works pretty well. And then it's really unclear who made it and who owns it.
Yeah, yeah, that is true, huh?
Yeah.
That's true. That's kind of, I think, akin to finding minerals or gold in the ground, right? It's whoever finds it claims it.
Well, we have laws about mineral rights and ownership of
Yeah,
property, but we just need to set the precedents for these new
yeah,
forms
yeah.
of creativity where you made something and there's more than one person that might reasonably make a claim to it.
All right, Sam, I got another story for you.
All right.
We talked last time about AT&T's outage for 12 hours.
Right.
And are you AT&T customer?
No, thank God.
No, I am not either, but I think this is pretty funny.
Yeah.
AT&T sent out an apology to everyone. We're very, very sorry. And they said, we realize that you might not have been able to call 911, and we highly suggest that you use a landline instead. But
Yeah.
what did we talk about
Yeah. No.
several episodes?
Yeah. There are no
AT&T,
landlines.
AT&T is canceling landlines in the
Yeah.
Bay Area.
Yeah. Of
So
course.
they're telling you to use their service that they don't offer anymore.
Well, who would want it anyway? I mean, I haven't had a landline in decades.
I'll tell you, I prefer a landline.
Oh,
And the reason I prefer that is because I can use a cordless phone or a headset, rather. I guess I could with a cell phone, but the quality of the call is much better.
it is. Yeah. That's the only issue. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think people
yeah,
who spend a lot of time on the phone might prefer it.
yeah, yeah. And you can see I wear a headset. I like a headset. I prefer that.
Yeah. I think most audio professionals prefer it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You got a
I
story
know,
for us.
I know when Caitlin is here, she has these big headphones on, which is what you musicians do and stuff. Yeah, I got a few of
Yeah.
these. So let's see, we did that one. So the big one I thought was probably the most important one was the change healthcare issue. As people say, this is the colonial pipeline moment for healthcare. Um, this company, Change Healthcare, is apparently responsible for billing for prescriptions, and it's been down for about a week due to ransomware. And this is backing up prescriptions all over the country. People can't get their prescriptions because they can't process the billing. And a whole bunch of services that are necessary to process insurance claims and all that stuff are not running, which is what happened with Colonial Healthcare, Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah. Colonial Pipeline, right?
So
Yeah.
apparently it's delaying
Yeah.
prescriptions all over the nation, and they say people aren't really noticing it as much as they're gonna. It's still going on too. I don't think they've resolved it yet. And they're, as usual, they have no idea what they're doing. They claimed it was a nation state attacker, but it was really just the Black Cat ransomware gang, which is not nation state. But they seem to be pretty helpless.
And this is affecting like CVS and Walgreens
Yes,
and pick your favorite pharmacy?
yes, several big ones I know. And I think, because apparently it's the service they all use. It's become a sort of monopoly where they all rely on one service to process the financial claims. That's always the problem, a single point
Oh.
of failure.
So do you know what the customer experience is? Are they not able to get their meds or they're paying a premium?
Apparently, they're not able to get their meds. They're being delayed. And it's
I
getting to
see.
be about a week they've been delayed. So people aren't too mad yet. But if it goes on much longer, people are going to start getting really mad, I think.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a similar one, by the way. There's an article about OT, which caught my attention because I'm teaching a class in OT and I'm getting very interested in it, critical infrastructure. And there's an article in the Register where they talked to Dragos CEO Robert Lee, and he said there are seeing a lot of attacks against oil and gas and electric, but the order of magnitude larger is manufacturing. And what the ransomware gangs have learned is that when they attack IT systems, sometimes people pay, sometimes they don't. But when they get through to the manufacturing OT systems and take them down, people panic and pay right away. And that's
Interesting.
certainly true because when you shut down industrial OT, the company is dead in the water.
Yeah, if you shut down a car assembly line, I mean that's an example. You've
Right,
got hundreds, if not thousands, of workers that are
right.
backed up. You've got product that's backed up,
Yep.
right? You can't make deliveries, right? You're paralyzed.
Yeah, and so
And
the
when,
criminal gangs have learned how to do it. They say it's weird to them. They don't understand it too well, but they're learning quickly how to attack OT networks, which I think is mostly Modbus.
yeah, yeah, Modbus, and there's some other proprietary protocols.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Profinet
yeah,
and
Pro,
GNP3,
yep.
but
And
Modbus
oh,
seems to be the big one.
yeah, Modbus, yeah, that dates back to the 70s, into the vacuum tube era, if you
Yeah.
will.
And apparently it's very easy to disrupt when you come through from the IT side.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, OT is operational technology.
Right. Yeah. And
We're using an abbreviation, yeah, so
yeah,
let's
that's they call
clarify
it
that.
OT as opposed to IT. And the operational technology is the stuff that controls mechanical devices like motors and assembly lines and drills and stuff to build
And
objects.
robotic arms, things along those lines, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it turns
And
out
it
to be extremely effective to computerize your assembly line or whatever you're building, but it also makes it vulnerable.
highly vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Especially when there's minimal or no security in these systems.
Yes, which, and that's the problem. People, just like Internet of Things, people rushed to connect these gadgets to the internet without thinking of the security consequences.
Yeah. Well, back in the 70s, there was no internet, there was no
Right,
thought really about security.
right.
But now, we need to add it in, or we need to provide something. And it's not that easy to do because a lot of this is baked into firmware that dates back to the 70s.
Yeah, realistically, you just need to segment your network is about the only thing you can.
Yeah.
You cannot
Yeah.
really update that stuff, but what you can do is hopefully protect it by limiting the traffic that comes in from the outside.
Yeah, right, right. And I attended a workshop not too long ago about power companies.
Right.
And the question was, we could have the smart grid. And the issue that the smart grid has is the power companies are using technology that probably dates back to the 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
And I do know that they're using modems that are 300 baud that go way, way back.
Well, I guess it's good enough to send like how many kilowatt hours you used this week.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they're using these to monitor transformers like heat sensors, things like
Yeah.
that, reservoir levels,
Yeah.
things along those lines. But the question was posed is all this equipment is in use, it's working. Yes, it's not secure. Yeah, it's not robust, it's not state of the art, but who's going to pay to replace it?
That's right. This is the same
Yep.
problem with all of the US. We have installed base of old versions of things that's working. And so it's finding some way to just get by with what's working is always much cheaper than replacing it with modern stuff.
Yeah. 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 Do
It's
you have
a
another
sunk
one?
cost fallacy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the replacement cost is not a one for one because you need to buy spares.
Right.
So you're talking about 150% replacement to 200%. You want one and a half to twice as much so you have spares. So when you have a storm, there's an outage, whatever it is, you have a replacement part, you can do it right away and not wait days or weeks for a shipment.
Right. And the math and the calculation is how much extra money would you make from doing that? And how long
Right.
before you have to replace that stuff with the new stuff? So it's realistic that you probably limping by with the previous stuff is probably the cost-effective solution.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of close with this. Cisco, Microsoft, I think Google, Oracle, all were interested in the smart grid
Yeah.
for several years, and then they realized there's no money to be made. It's going to take way too long. The power companies aren't going to move in that direction very quickly, and so they all got out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think Cisco even developed a proprietary protocol for the power companies for the
Uh,
smart grid. So I guess that's gone back onto the shelf and has become shelfware.
yeah, this is a problem. I know it's also a problem in healthcare where there are a bunch of diseases where there are just not enough people that would buy the drug to make it worth developing.
Yeah. Yeah. You
All
got
right.
another story or other?
I don't think I do. I think the only thing we
No.
got left is your crypto story.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one here. Everybody was talking about crypto, the big thing. So almost $1 billion of crypto was transferred out of Coinbase by multiple investors this month. And it's resulted in one of the largest outflows of cryptocurrency out of the biggest crypto exchange.
Yeah,
And
profit
are you,
take. I mean, I'm not surprised at all because the crypto price finally went up to where you could sell your Bitcoin at a profit.
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
people are finally taking their profits and trying to get out of it because anybody that bought crypto like a couple of years ago has been suffering through a long period of loss. And now is your chance to recoup your investment.
Yeah, so Bitcoins held by Coinbase have plummeted to its lowest level in the
Yeah.
past 7, 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the question is, will crypto revive and rise again, or is this just sort of the end of it?
Yeah, what do you think?
I think it'll revive and rise again. I think the same
You think
forces that
so?
made it rise before are still there. Yes. I think it rises because of lack of faith in financial institutions and people wanting to escape government control. And I think anti-government and anti-institution sentiment is just growing.
Yeah, yeah, you might have a point there.
Yeah,
So, that's the reason that people buy gold, right?
right, right. It
Yeah.
boosts gold. And matter of fact, gold would probably be a wiser reservoir of value than Bitcoin, but Bitcoin has a pattern. It rises a lot and then falls and it repeats every 3 years. So I think it's going to continue.
All right. So we're not giving financial advice, we're just giving our opinions here,
Well, of
right?
course, I mean, I'm not qualified to tell anybody what to do with their money, but I don't see anything has changed really about the incentives around Bitcoin. Now, there was a huge bunch of shit coins that came out, and they pretty much died, and that was the crazy stuff. But Bitcoin and Ethereum are in for the long run, I think.
I think so. Okay.
But they're both
Okay.
well established. They've been around for 10 years, and whatever reason they have to exist has continued to remain true.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, interesting, note on this cryptocurrency.
Yeah. Anyway,
So we'll see. So that's it for me.
yeah, that's it for me too. So we'll have another one of these on Friday.
Yeah. And, that's going to be March. So we're hitting March already,
Yep, yep.
March 1st.
Yes, and the next Republican primaries and Super Tuesday coming up. So that stuff will all be over in a week or two.
Ooh, so a lot of AI generated content, I'm assuming, huh?
Not so much. You know, there was just this one magician that was paid to make that fake robocall about from Biden, and showed
Yeah.
that you could do it for $1. So it's very easy to make AI generated stuff, and yet I haven't heard much. But this is just the primary. And the Republican primary is not drama at all. I mean, obviously Trump is going to win. So I think come closer to November, when it is Biden versus Trump, then we're going to see the deep fakes like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
real stakes in this primary. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the call that you're talking about, that was in Connecticut. Was it
I think it might have been another state, but yeah, this guy made it was, guy in Las Vegas, magician made it, and it told people not to vote in the primary to try. It was from the guy running against Biden, Doug something. His
don't know.
yeah, Biden has a Democratic challenger who has no chance at all, but he one of his staffers, supposedly without authorization, made this call telling people Biden voters not to bother voting in the primary, trying to get more people to vote for him.
I see. I see.
And
I see.
it was but anyway, it was the effect of that was essentially zero, but the technology demonstrated showed how easy it is to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think Vermont or Connecticut. I think it was
Yeah,
Vermont. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, we'll see you on Friday.
Okay. I'll turn this one off if I can find the right button. There it is.